What is up, guys? Toasty Bros here, and we are back with AMD versus Intel, and in this video we are doing the $700 price range. This is about to be interesting.
Alright, so first we're going to be having Matt. He has Intel, so go ahead, Matt.
Alright, so we're going to start with the processor. First off, I decided to choose the i5 4690K, which is a quad-core processor clocked at 3.5 GHz. This processor is an unlocked processor, has a good turbo boost, and it's one of the newer Intel CPUs. You could go with a lower-end CPU and get a higher-end GPU, but in this build, I focused more on having a really quality CPU and focused on upgrading around it. So that was my goal in this build. When you go with Intel about $700, it's more or less you want to get a good CPU and something that will run games, but I mean, you could go with like a G32, something, whatever it is, the dual-core processor and overclock it, but honestly, I decided to go with the i5 because I just kind of wanted to go all out with it.
Okay, and for me, I went with the AMD FX 8350 Black Edition. This is an 8-core processor clocked at 4 GHz, and then you can see it's 4.2 turbo, and this processor can be overclocked, of course, you know, knowing AMD. So yeah, running at 4 GHz stock, that's a pretty high number right there, and then of course it's 8 whole cores. It uses a lot of watts, so 125 watts. Heatsink and fan included, but do not suggest doing that, so I'm going to go ahead and show what I got with that. I got a Corsair Hydro Series H55. It's quiet edition, which I don't know if the 30 decibels is not very quiet, but you never know, maybe this really is quiet. I'm running an H80i right now actually with my 6300, and I can tell you Corsair's water cooling series runs extremely cool, and it actually does run really quiet, so yeah, I definitely suggest this, you know. Alright, let's go to Matt's next thing.
Alright, so for the GPU, I chose the GTX 750 Ti. So the reason I chose this GPU is it's a relatively good price and it's a mid-range card. I would compare it to an R9 270, not the X version, but an R9 270. It's a very mid-range card. It does what you need for 1080p gaming. You'll be able to run any game you really want at 1080p. You can just play your games and not have any issues, and it's a really nice card for the price, and you can easily upgrade eventually because you could get something for like 180 bucks, sell this card or whatever, and just split the difference whenever you want to upgrade. So it gives you a pretty good upgrade path and a good way to jump into gaming.
Okay, and for my graphics card, I kind of went all out. I went with a R9 280, not 280X, but 280. Still very good. I guess, Matt, what is that like compared to a 270X, do you know?
A 280 compared to 270X, it's kind of a jump. It's a good series jump. Like, you could probably get a good 10-15 FPS ahead of like a 270X probably. So okay, it's pretty decent.
So yeah, you just heard it from an expert. So yeah, definitely a good card, because the 270X can pretty much run any game you throw at it as long as you have a good processor. So that's definitely, you know, a good card if you're able to do that. You can see 500 watt power supply is required, so it is going to use a lot of watts along with the AMD 8350, so be sure to get a decent power supply with it, and then also make sure to actually fit in the build. But you can see it has 4K support. You know, it has, what was it, 3 gigs of RAM, which is, you know, a lot to come with the graphics card, so you're really not going to have any trouble running anything you want to. And then of course you could do you know, dual monitors and things like that by using splitters and all that, or just, you know, even going out the things that it already has.
Alright, so I went with some G-Skill Ripjaw's X Series 8GB RAM. You know, you could watch the same video over and over again. I choose the same RAM every time. But it's quality RAM. It's red, and I'm trying to think of something I haven't said about it before. But it's really good RAM, 1600 MHz speed, and it does the job. Yeah, it's G-Skill. Quality. It's quality.
For once, I actually went with some different RAM, believe it or not. So you can see this is $3 more, but it is basically, what would that be, like just one speed above, you know, the 1600. This one's 1866, and it also runs in dual channel, of course. So that's really the only difference, is that it's a little bit higher frequency, so a little bit more megahertz with it. but you know, I'm hoping that that little bit more would, you know, make a decent improvement at least. I don't know how much it would really be, but you know, just maybe a small enough difference to where it'd be worth, you know, spending the $3 extra, and it looks pretty nice.
Yeah, true. All right, so I managed to squeeze in a Seagate hybrid drive. It's 1 terabyte. For 80 bucks, you get basically a combo SSD hard drive. I never personally have tested one, but I really do want to try to get one sometime in the future and test it out. But it's really fast. It's quick. It's not really as fast as an SSD, but it's quick. It does the job, and it's good to start out with. You can always upgrade in the future and add an SSD if you want to, but for right now, it'll give you a really quick and responsive OS and just everything when it comes to loading games and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Okay, and then I couldn't fit it in the budget. You guys know I would have gone with the hybrid drive because, you know, just like Matt said, I'd love to try one, and you know, just from what I've heard, it's like you're kind of like your crossover. You know, you get half SSD speed and then half hard drive speed, so it's kind of like in between. So definitely good for, you know, the people who are on a budget but, you know, still want a good hard drive. You know, mine's just your basic hard drive. Pretty much anyone who has a computer has used a basic hard drive. You know, these are the newer WD drives. They're the blue series, which is actually what I think I have in my computer right now. I mean, definitely, you know, they're definitely reliable, really fast. I've never had a problem with them, but you know, just from running off SSDs sometimes, you know, you definitely do notice some, you know, decent differences and things. So that's why a hybrid drive would be pretty cool, but you know, couldn't afford it in this build.
Alright, so for the power supply, I use the power supply that I use in my system, which is the Corsair CX500. 500 watt power supply, 80 plus bronze certified. Gives you enough wiggle room to basically throw in a new graphics card if you want to. Pretty much anything out there can run off 500 watts most likely. Not everything, but for a good point, most stuff can run off 500 watts with this processor and everything in it. But it is a good idea to just have 500 watts in your system because it's just good to have extra wiggle room sometimes, and you could easily run the system on less, but it's good to have it. So.
And you have a slot for a floppy drive.
You do have a slot for a floppy drive. That's
and I don't know if you said it, but it is modular, by the way.
Oh, it is a modular power supply.
Yeah,
so that's always good.
That's a big thing. I've never even owned a modular power supply.
Yeah, for $54, it's good for a modular power supply.
Okay, and I have mine backwards. Whoops. Okay, so for my power supply, I also went with a modular one. I used to actually have a Raid Max one that also was blue just like this. And I can say, you know, I loved it. Mine was, I think, 430 watts, and never had a single problem with it. It was way quieter than the power supply I'm using now. This one is the newer version. It's modular. You can do Crossfire or SLI, and then you know, you can also turn the LED fan on and off apparently, which you didn't used to be able to do that with mine either. And of course, your on and off switch and all that. But you can see it comes with a lot of extra connections because it is modular. And 730 watts, because the only reason I did that is because of the GPU I went with. Uses quite a bit of watts, so had to kind of do that.
True.
Boom.
Alright, so the motherboard I got was literally the most dirt cheap motherboard that could support my processor.
As usual.
As usual, it's the best thing I could do. For 50 bucks, it's a micro ATX board. It basically, like, if you look at it, it's so bare bones, it's ridiculous. It fits the processor. You can't overclock on it, sadly enough. I couldn't manage to put that in the budget. But honestly, if I were you with this build, I would have done it differently, honestly. I would have gotten a little lower end i5 and then basically got a higher motherboard to be able to overclock. But I really just wanted to see what I could manage with an i5 4690K because it's a really nice processor, just at stock speed. So I just wanted to get basically a build for people who aren't into tinkering and just want performance. So this works, and you can slap that 8 gigs of RAM in there and be good to go.
Okay, and for mine, for once, I didn't go with a super cheap motherboard. Normally my motherboards would be like 40 bucks, but to be truthful, the motherboard in my computer is a MSI, 970 gaming board or whatever, which this one also says 970. I think it's a 970. It's that one board though that looks really cool and has like the dragon and the boost audio and all that, which is actually normally 100 bucks. So I decided to give this one a little bit extra boost. Instead of my normal $40, $50 board, you know, went 20, 30 more. This one can take higher frequency RAM because that's what we're getting is 1866. And then of course it will be able to handle the processor we're putting in. It is overclocking capable, you know, it has 3.0. Probably can take up to 32 gigs of RAM if I had to get, yeah, 32 gigs of RAM, 4 slots. You know, it has all of your upgrade slots like PCI and all that. It doesn't come with onboard video because we're not going to need that. And yeah, it just comes with all the, you know, things you'd really want, and it's a full ATX board, I believe. Yeah, it's not micro ATX. Okay, let's go back to Matt and see what case he got.
Alright, so I picked up the NZXT blah 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 mid-tower case. This case has a side window and it's black. It looks really slick and you can see inside the system. And for the price at like, it's just $64 is a good price for this. It just looks really nice, and the side window is always the good thing to have because you can see inside and everything. And I always wanted a system with a side panel, and eventually I'll get there. But you know, it's nice. It's really nice.
Mine has a top panel.
Woo, woo.
You know what I'm saying though, Matt? The top panel.
Yeah, and top panel.
Yeah. Okay, so I also went with I went with a $48 case. I was about to say 60 something. But yeah, anyway, it's made by DIY PC, which I hadn't really heard of them until recently. I'm starting to see quite a few cases by them, so I'm not really sure if they're good or not, but they definitely have some cool looking tanks. You can see it has a, you know, little cheesy graphics on the side, which kind of used to interest me when I was looking at cases. You know, now I probably wouldn't do it. But this would, I don't know, I think it'd be a really cool case for like a person first building a computer, just because, you know, you have green LEDs with the green fans, you know, like in the green fans in the front. I mean, it just matches, you know, a certain scheme, which is really cool for first PCs. Obviously, you can get them in different colors. You can see they have quite a bit of room, and then you also have spots for not water cooling. So, yeah. I don't think there is a spot for water cooling, and I got a water cooler, so that might be my fault. Calling myself on it now. I don't really feel like looking for it right now, though. But anyways, yeah.
Well,
so yeah. I mean, for $50 though, you can probably find a case that does support for water cooling. But yeah. Should have done my research. Didn't do my research very well.
Nice. Okay. Well, to summarize, I feel like Jackson has the better overall gaming PC here with his graphics card and processor performance. He can basically get any game maxed out and do whatever with it, being able to overclock. I think I went okay with the i5. I probably should have went with something a little cheaper and added more for the GPU to balance it out a little more. But with Intel, when it comes to price range, you're either really high or really low, and there's not really a good in-between price. The in-between prices are kind of sketchy on some of their processors. You just don't really know what you're getting, and you can't overclock. So I wanted to get something that could overclock and also had a good stock speed to begin with. So it was kind of a mixed bag, so I kind of just went with what I could.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I agree with Matt about AMD winning this one. Mainly because if you're an AMD fan, you know the 8350 is like just a scary processor, as in it can either play games really good or burn down your whole house. So that's why, you know, went with the water cooling, and so we're safe on that one. And then, you know, especially when you mix it up with an R9 series, just from experience, you just know that you're gonna be able to max out any game. So
Sure.
yeah. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this AMD versus Intel $700 budget. And we hope you guys enjoyed, and we're going to keep doing these all the way up to $1 million.
Exactly.
That'd be a long freaking time.
Alright.
If we were doing $1 million, we have to start including a house with it too.
Dude, a house with a PC sounds
yeah.
like a plan.
Like, we'd have to pick the whole house, and then we'll just put a normal, what is it called? iBuy power computer in it.
iBuy house computer.
Exactly.
Alright.
Alright.